Hi, everybody. Welcome to We Gotta Talk. We're back live today, which is exciting for me. We have a guest that I know you all will just benefit so much from hearing from today. Risa Groux is a certified nutritionist, a functional nutritionist, as well as an autoimmune coach. So basically, what that means is that she helps people overcome any issues they might have with autoimmune or specifically with thyroid as well. And I have gotten countless DMs when I've done health episodes in the past, particularly about the thyroid when we talk about hormones. So, Risa, I'm so glad to have you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sunny, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Why do we all at a certain age, Risa, start to have issues or seem to start to have issues either with the thyroid or an autoimmune or both?
Yeah, autoimmune is growing, unfortunately. Currently, there's 50 million Americans that are affected with autoimmune disease and counting. We are increasing our rate of autoimmunity. We're seeing younger and younger people with autoimmunity. I mean, I grew up, I didn't even know what an autoimmune disease was until I was diagnosed with one, right? And now we have kids who have autoimmune disease, and it's really a shame. And I don't know if that's specifically because we test more for it or that we are just growing at a higher rate because of the toxic world that we're living in. There's a lot of root causes to autoimmunity. A third of it is genetics. So if you have somebody in your immediate family that has autoimmunity, you're likely to have that. The other major portion is leaky gut, right? When we only have one layer of epithelial cells to protect our intestinal lining, only one. We have 7 on the outside skin. And so it's really, really fragile. So things like stress and chemicals and all kinds of toxicities, gluten, dairy, sugar, alcohol, all inflammatory things will help poke holes in that intestinal lining. And there we have leaky gut, or what we call intestinal permeability. And that is an antibody production, basically, because these things go in through the system and the body says, who are you? You're the enemy. You're coming in through the back door, and it creates these antibodies. And if you have enough antibodies, that's our defense mechanism, right? And if we have enough antibodies for long enough, we are going to find a place to park themselves, right? They're going to find a tissue, a gland, an organ, or a cell in which to park themselves and erroneously think that's the enemy and start attacking it. So in the case of thyroid, which is what I had, I was originally diagnosed with a hypothyroid, meaning that my thyroid was a bit of an underachiever. I was given this synthetic medication saying, here, take this synthetic hormone so that you can replicate the hormone that your body is actually supposed to produce. You're born to produce it. And then after I had my second child, I realized I wasn't feeling that great. And I went and got tested and found out that I had Hashimoto's, which is now an autoimmunity where I'm attacking my thyroid. So after a while, I said, this is like crazy. I'm going to find the root causes. So, I had genetics. My mom had Hashimoto's. I'm pretty sure both my grandmothers had Hashimoto's, but they were never tested for it. And then, I had some leaky gut because most people do. And I did for sure at that time. And then there's other things like a gene mutation called MTHFR, which is something that I had. I have. And so I took the proper B vitamin in methylated form, and I took care of that. Things like Epstein-Barr virus or any certain types of viruses can cause it. Certain pathogens in the gut. Of course, I had that as well. I had EBV, certain pathogens in the gut that can cause autoimmunity. And then there are things like hormonal changes, so we typically see after pregnancy or menopause, we can see autoimmunity start to become present. Then we can see things like low vitamin D, heavy metals, so high toxicity, high mercury, things like that can cause autoimmune disease.
There's so much. I mean, it feels like an uphill battle. I do personally believe that environmental issues have a lot to do with it too. And I'm in agreement with that. I just know that from the consumer side, it's overwhelming, really. And people will often say, give me, like, what are the things that I can control, right? So we might not be able to control our predilection or our genetic history for some type of disorder or autoimmune issue, but we can maybe control some of the environmental factors that would exacerbate them or even make them even come to the surface in the first place. If someone was doing an edit of their environment and wanted to control some of those things, what are some key things that we can do?
Oh, wow. So we do have a lot of control. And you're right. I always say that genetics load the gun, but your environment and lifestyle pull the trigger. So you have control for the most part of your environment as far as what you put in your mouth, the foods you buy. Are they sprayed with pesticides, and do they have glyphosate in them, and all these, toxic chemicals? And the other major big one is what we're using for our cleaning supplies, right? That is like a huge one. And scented candles and perfumes and plugins and all these air fresheners that we have and all these scented things and chemicals in our cleaning supplies is a huge one. And then we have beauty products, right? So our makeup, our nails, our hair, whatever we are putting in our shampoo every day, or all the makeup that we're using and all the chemicals we put on our nails, which is amazing to me what we do, right? So all of those things, and the sunscreen, I mean, it can go on and on and on. So it's what you're breathing, what you're putting on your skin, and what you're eating. Those are the three sources of that can very really affect your body with your toxic load. So decreasing that is just, it's in your reach, right? It's in your control. And then food is just what you're buying, make sure that it's clean and there's no chemicals and no preservatives and no additives, which is tough, right? You have to be very conscious of what you're buying and what you're eating.
Yeah, so I would guess that you are not a fan of like a chemical sunscreen, something like an avobenzone or something that soaks in. We're going to look more for what is zinc oxide, one of those that sit on the surface of the skin. What are we avoiding with cleaning products? Because I want to dial down on some specific things that people at least can look to avoid when they're shopping.
Yeah, what we're looking for is phthalates, and they all have kind of all these very fancy names. The best thing that people can do is go onto the Environmental Working Group, EWG, website or app, and you can scan everything. You can put everything in there. I look at my shampoos, all my cleaning supplies, I go in there and it gives you the level of toxicity and look for what to avoid.
I just found out maybe a year ago that I have some thyroid nodules, and leaning toward the health anxious person that I am, I talk all the time on this podcast about the number of voluntary tests that I do to kind of keep tabs on things. And it can have an upside, which is you catch things, and it can have a downside, which is you catch things. So what would you say? And from what I gather, this is not uncommon. In fact, I know multiple women who are in the same spot. We are told a lot of times, just ignore the thyroid nodule until it gets to a certain size. What is your advice to the woman who has those, is monitoring them? They're not a problem now, but what do we do? Can we reverse them? And if not, what do we do to make sure they don't become problematic?
Great question. And yes, that is the typical mantra that we get from conventional medicine. And unfortunately, in our conventional allopathic medicine paradigm, we don't really treat you until you're in full-blown disease state. So, and our ranges are really wide because we're not looking for optimal health in those ranges. We're looking for what's normal. And we are a sick and obese nation. And so that's what is considered normal that's coming into that lab. People don't realize that labs reassess their ranges quarterly. So every single solitary lab, and I don't care if it's in the same building, two different companies, they're all reassessing their labs quarterly to move it to what is considered normal. Not all markers, but many of them. Thyroid is one of those markers. So what doctors are looking for is your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, to go high enough where you're in full-blown disease. In functional medicine or functional nutrition, we don't do that. First of all, I test for all 9 markers of the thyroid because I don't know, are our sex hormones affecting it? Is our stress, our inflammation? Are we reversing? Do we have antibodies? I mean, I have to see what's going on first to the thyroid. But to your question, nodules can be very normal, and it doesn't mean that it leads to a cancerous state or a hypothyroid or a Hashimoto's, but it has to be something that is monitored for sure. What I give everybody, including myself, when I had nodules, I put glutathione cream on my thyroid, and that really helps. Yeah, you're so excited.
Wait, I want a solution. Tell me, where do I get it? And how can I bathe in it? Like, what can I do? Because
well, glutathione is our master antioxidant. So we all make it, but it's kind of like female eggs. Once it leaves the building, we just don't really have it. And as we age, we just produce less because we do that for everything typically. And so I use a product in my office. It's a cream that is a master antioxidant. It's a glutathione. I take glutathione as well, but topically I put that on the thyroid, and we tend to see these nodules definitely lessen. Yeah.
Okay, what's the name of it? I will link it in show notes, guys, but I'm only doing this so that I can immediately mark it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
That's
happy.
amazing.
I'm happy I've got it in my office. It's called Oxycell and it's really, really good.
That's really good to know. I mean, this is why I've long been a I don't want to say client, I don't know what the word, a patient of a functional medicine practitioner for the
Right.
exact reasons that you are describing. And this is what I always say to women when we engage on social media, not from an expert point of view, but it's from the point of view of someone who's interviewed a lot of experts, which is taking your health into your own hands, and not in an obsessive way, but working with these types of practitioners. And I have had better luck with functional practitioners because they often do a full panel of tests to get the broader picture. It's not just symptomatic. I'm coming in, oh, I'm feeling, I don't know, tired or dizzy, and they pinpoint that and let it be. I mean, I've had such a great experience working with someone who, like you, has sort of broadened my overall view. Tell me about why this functional approach is just blowing up in popularity, and what it provides to a patient that maybe the medical system of the past, and we don't want to demonize that, but what the traditional medical system of the past maybe does not provide.
Yeah. And I don't want to speak pejoratively of doctors because they're taught in medical school what they're taught, right? They
Right.
really are taught basically about chemistry and what medications solve which issues. And they don't really look at solutions, right? They're just kind of looking at which band-aid is going to help more effectively. So
Mhm.
it's not really their fault. A lot of things are predicated on insurance companies and big pharma, but I won't go down that road. So there's four major pillars in functional medicine or functional nutrition, which is what I do. And the four major pillars are we are looking for root causes. So why is
Mhm.
it that I have chronically horrible headaches or skin issues or bowel dysfunction or whatever it is, fatigue, you name it, there is a root cause to that, right? It's not
Mhm.
because you were born with a deficiency in some type of medication. That is not our philosophy. The second pillar that we work with is prevention. So as I mentioned, those ranges are so wide, the conventional medicine doesn't help you until you're in full-blown disease. We don't
Mhm.
do that. We look at,
Mhm.
for instance, we'll look at insulin resistance to see, are you on your way to prediabetes? It usually comes before prediabetes, which comes before diabetes. We're not going to wait until you're already diabetic to help. And lots of other things. Our ranges are much more narrow because we're looking for prevention and we're really looking for optimal health, not just what's normal. The
Mhm.
third pillar is that we consider the whole body one interconnective unit because it is, right? Everything has to do with each other. And so many things like the thyroid, for example, really affects almost every system in the body. So it's critically important that we have a high functioning thyroid, right? Because
Mhm.
it affects your blood sugars, it affects your sex hormones, it'll affect tons of things, right? Weight loss and weight gain and fatigue. And I mean, I can go on and on. So, and the fourth pillar is data, right? I'm not really good at playing darts with the lights off and I cannot see the target. I need to know where I'm aiming. So I do a full major panel of blood work, and then I do a stool test to find out 84 things that are going on in the intestines so that we can really, those are really the foundational things that I focus on in my practice because I have learned doing this for decades that these are the things that either optimize our health or hinder our health. And then one is gut health is
Mhm.
extraordinarily important, and the other is systemic inflammation. And
Mhm.
I don't ever see inflammation markers tested by any allopathic medicine.
Yeah, I've not done that. What does that test look like, and what are we using to gauge that or to measure that? Is that like a
Inflammation.
saliva test? The inflammation, yeah.
No, I just do it through a blood test. I'm looking for CRP or C-reactive protein. That's a cardiovascular marker. I know we're still sort of in that 80s mindset of
Mhm.
cholesterol is the devil, but it really actually isn't. It's our messenger system. We actually need it to conjugate our hormones, our vitamin D. And cholesterol, we do not have cardiovascular disease from high cholesterol. Our cholesterol goes up for four major reasons. One is blood sugar dysregulation, two
Mhm.
is thyroid dysregulation, three is liver congestion, and four is gallbladder congestion. And a lot of it is hereditary too, right? I know mine runs really high in my family. So I know that my cholesterol tends to run on the higher side. But again,
Mhm.
they just moved the ranges. It's always been 185 to 200. Now it's 99 to 169, which is crazy. So I had somebody come in my office last year with a cholesterol of 139. He had just gotten out of the hospital with a heart attack. It's
Wow,
not.
yeah, it's wild, and I talk to my parents often, excuse me. And hearing them and the way that they worried, or the things that they worried about or gave more attention to, and how much more we know now. And I try to like sort of infuse some of the new information toward them, because they can be scared off by some of the things you said, or some of this, what they consider to be like a newfangled way to do things. But it really is amazing how far we've come, and understanding the interplay of all of these things, and how maybe, like you said, one marker, for example, cholesterol going in a certain direction doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just how it works with everything else.
Right, exactly. It's one interconnected unit. So why is it going up? Are there, something driving up that cholesterol, right? What's the driver, right?
Tell me a little bit more about how the thyroid is connected to our hormones, how it's connected to our gut health. I had it explained to me once by a hormone specialist or expert. Something about like a triangle. There were 3 points on it. One was a thyroid, one was hormones, and I can't remember the third. But can you explain that to us?
Yes. They were describing our endocrine system. And our endocrine system is, it's driven by our pituitary, right? Our hypothalamus is really the CEO or the chairman of the board, I should say. And the CEO is really our pituitary. And our pituitary starts functioning for all three departments. The thyroid is one, sex hormone is the other. And the one you were forgetting was our adrenal glands, our cortisol production. Yes. So when we are stressed, we're chronically stressed, we're going to have a hard time losing weight, right? We may have a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep, right? So cortisol is really, really, really important. If we're exercising too hard, if we're exercising too late, these are things that will drive up cortisol. We'll go high for a long time, and eventually the body goes, I can't do this. And it drops. And then the exhaustion sets in, right? The lack of motivation, all that stuff, that is usually from a low cortisol. So all three of those are completely interconnected. And a lot of times what I see this quite often, is high elevated blood sugars because of elevated cortisol. I will see dysregulated blood sugars because of dysregulated thyroid. So I don't always go to treat the blood sugar with a supplement, let's say. I'll do it through lifestyle, but I will work on the thyroid, because once you adjust that thyroid, a lot of things will fall into place as a result.
You're inspiring me to kind of tackle that as the top of the totem pole. For a while, I've been really diligent about my hormones. And my listeners will know this. I've been speaking about all the different ways that my doctor has me supplementing and bioidenticaling, and little smidgens, little amounts. I have, knock on wood, had a lot of luck. My hormones are in good shape now, but now you're inspiring me to like pay a little more attention to the thyroid, because my mom had thyroid cancer. I mean, this is something that, flags on any and every medical report that when I do intake with the doctor. So how can we be more deliberate about thyroid health? Understanding, of course, we're all coming at this with different numbers and different health issues. But if there were, say, a supplement that you generally recommend for women for good thyroid health, or a practice you recommend to keep that in better shape, what are some just generic tips to focus on that part of the body?
Yeah, so thyroid, thyroid health are some things that I would do to avoid, to optimize our health, right? So I would avoid soy. That's a really big one. Soy and the thyroid don't really get along. So soy, isoflavins. So basically we're talking about, soy lecithin, soy products, soy sauce and edamame and things like that. I would avoid for the most part. I mean, don't worry if you have it here or there, but I would really take it out of your daily consumption. The other thing is gluten is not the greatest thing for thyroid, and most dairy is not really very helpful for thyroid. Now, that is just for thyroid health. If you're in autoimmunity, I'm going to give you a bigger list on that. But if you have autoimmune disease, it basically means that in your Treg cells, which is our immune system, our Th17 gets activated. And this is where basically we go through a cytokine storm, right, which is all inflammation. So basically what I say to people is, when you've got antibodies to anywhere in your body, right, whether it's your thyroid or elsewhere, you've got a raging fire in your basement, raging. You may go to the doctor, they might give you a little squirt gun. But what you need to do is put out that fire. So what you eat matters, because you're either eating something that's going to inflame that fire or to quell it. So we want to have anti-inflammatory foods to quell that, and nutrients, right? And then we want, and so we want to decrease that systemic inflammation. And I do that. I have a Fab 5 of supplements that I use to decrease that. But as far as food is concerned, what we can do, the other thing is selenium. Selenium is really, really important mineral that we need, and it helps with the actual conversion of our T4, which is our inactive thyroid hormone. We do not use it. It's 93% of that equation. We have to cleave off one atom of iodine and convert it into T3. That's our active thyroid hormone. And so selenium is really, really essential for making that conversion possible.
Is it true that 2 Brazil nuts a day will do it?
It is absolutely true.
Okay. I got them from Trader Joe's. They're not the most flavorful things, but we do whatever we have to do in the name of health.
Keep them in the freezer and I throw them in my shake.
Oh, okay. That's good. They do have, they're nuts, but they have a very nutty, rich flavor. They're not bad. They're just,
Right.
there's just not much to them.
It's
Okay.
the one everybody leaves in the jar, right? And the mixed nuts, those are the ones that are left. Nobody wants
Those
right?
big hulking plain ones that you're just like, I could,
Right.
they're just like not the best. Do you think that it is possible to reverse our conditions, whether they be autoimmune related or thyroid related, through diet and supplementation alone? And knowing that many people use medications to often address these things.
The answer is a resounding yes. I've been able to reverse my Hashimoto's. I have been able to help and watch many people I work with reverse their Hashimoto's, reverse their rheumatoid arthritis, and some other things, some other autoimmune diseases. I'm working with somebody right now with Sjogren's. We had an appointment 2 weeks ago. She told me that she is now salivating for the first time for a really, really, really long time, years. I've worked with somebody in Sjogren's in the past who was never able to cry and mourn her husband. So it took us a while, but we got there, and she called me one day and just literally tears, so grateful that she was able to cry. So I have seen unbelievable reversals of autoimmunity. Now, not all autoimmune diseases can be reversed, but I work with people with Parkinson's. I work with lots of autoimmune diseases. And can we slow the progression? Absolutely, we can. And so for those who we can't actually reverse, if we can find the root cause that's causing that autoimmunity, we have a really high probability of reversing it. But if not, we have a really high probability of halting its progression. Now, just an example, I worked with one of the greatest golfers of our time, PGA pro, Freddie Couples. And he came to me without an autoimmune disease. He wanted to lose 20 pounds before the Masters. But I said, Freddie, let's talk about all this inflammation you have in your back. Like, you have massive back pain. And he was telling me all these doctors he sees all over the world. He travels with his physical therapist. He's always in back pain. I put him on my detox. And 1 week, he had cut his pain in half. And then every day thereafter I ever saw him, he was always at a 0 or a 1 instead of an 8 that he had come in my office with as far as pain value. So I said, Freddie, has anybody ever tested you for inflammation? And he said, I don't think so. So I ordered all these tests, a little bit more for him than I do with usual people. And he said, order whatever you need to. And sure enough, his inflammation markers were through the roof. And this is a guy who both of his homes are on golf courses. He works on golf courses. So he is breathing in these chemicals day in and day out. Plus he travels all the time. And he's eating food in restaurants all the time. So he had this chemical explosion going on. And we decreased that inflammation. His back pain went away. I love that story because it's not autoimmune, but it's so basic.
It is basic, and it's encouraging in a way. And I know I'm spilling lots of family secrets here, but my mom has Parkinson's too. And all it takes is one person close to you who's experiencing a lifelong condition or a life-changing diagnosis to realize that it's worth trying, right? It's worth trying to control some of it, to get ahead of some of this stuff. And so many times, Risa, I ask, and it's funny, I know that you wouldn't mind me sharing this because we're a pretty open family, but we sit there sometimes and we're like, there's no family history of Parkinson's. And I'm like, what do you think it was, Mom? Do you think it was the chemicals from, she was like a clean freak. Was it the bleach? When Dad used the whatever Roundup on the weeds twice a year, because we lived up north, so we weren't outside all the time. Was it that? Was it and it's its own special hell to try to go back and figure out what caused this.
Well,
Yeah.
There's
So
a
to put yourself in a position where you don't have to have that diagnosis and think about it, to me is the greatest gift.
Oh, for sure. And we're now having more association of root causes, right? There is a ochratoxin mold that I test people for with Parkinson's that I have not had a person who has not had that who has Parkinson's. There is also paraquat, which is a preservative, and there is dry cleaning chemicals that have now all three been associated with Parkinson's.
It really enrages me to know that I know causation and correlation are two distinct things for a reason, and that the medical community and the scientific community really has to uphold high standards to say something causes something. I get it. But to see, for example, the lawsuits that are moving through that have to do with the pesticides, and them to still resist saying this causes this and like ban it and blanket, just get rid of it, is infuriating to me. And it puts the onus on us as consumers to
Exactly.
follow up. And it's so frustrating to me
Yeah.
to,
Well, look at what happened with Teflon.
yes, exactly. And
I
it
mean,
took how long and how many people getting sick?
right. And talc powder, all these young girls
Mhm.
were getting cancer. I mean, do we not have enough evidence now to not know that these chemicals are affecting our health? But
Mhm.
the FDA keeps approving them.
Mhm.
We are at 86,000 chemicals approved by the FDA, and so many of them are not even tested.
It's
And they're
wild.
they're approved about 2 to 6,000 a year, regardless of who's in the White House. So it's a beast that we have to be. Yes, the onus is on us for sure. We have to be extraordinarily diligent. I feel bad for these young kids because
Mm.
our parents have to be so diligent about the chemicals that are going into their little bodies, and what chance do they have,
I know.
right?
It's real. I know so many people that have gotten cancer in their 30s and 40s now too. Like that's a whole separate conversation outside of the thyroid and autoimmune. It's just wild. And like I guess what I would love to hear from you too, because this is a huge part of our health, is our mental health, because you deal in potential dangers and risk factors all day, right? You're talking with your patients about exposures to things and what to avoid. How do you tell your patients to chill and calm down and to not let this overtake their nervous system, right? Because the type of person that I am, the more information I get, sometimes the easier it is for me to just spiral and just worry about everything. So, talk to me about the mental health component of all of this knowledge.
Yeah, and I've been down that rabbit hole too. I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I can go down several rabbit holes going, oh my God, the ETFs and the, just it's everywhere amongst us. And so what I say to everybody I work with is we're all going to die of something. So pick your poisons. And if you have this high cortisol production at all times, you have a higher chance of dying because you're really putting stress on your body about worrying about this stuff. There's only so much we can control. I travel, I go out to dinners, I do the very best I can. I clean out my liver all the time. I do my detox at least 3 times a year, and I do detox shakes every week to help continually clean out my liver. You can control your exercise, your sleep, and your food. So that is the most important thing to do. Just control what you can control,
Mhm.
and the rest you can't get hysterical about it because it's not worth it to you. It's going to affect you worse by worrying about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's really easy, like, especially when this is my job to like, I'm interviewing brilliant people all the time and I'm going back and being like, okay, like I have this mental running list. I'm like, this is what I do next, and this is what I do next. And I recently had to just I had a come to Jesus moment with myself where I was like, girl, you are not in control. Like, do your testing. I did all the things, all the fun things, the cancer markers and the MRI and the hormone panels and the guts. Like, at some point, the thermography, I mean, the whole thing, Risa. My husband is like, are you okay? And I do just want to stress that because I think that an abundance of information is a blessing, but it could also send us spiraling. So it's just
Sure.
important to flag that, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, do the best you can. I
Mhm.
have, the right drinking water, and I don't drink out of plastic bottles when I can avoid it. I go the extra mile to take care of what I can. I just furnished a whole home. It was very hard to find furniture without chemicals. That was really a challenge. But I found rugs that are 100% cotton or 100% wool, And, I do the very best I can. I aired
Mhm.
out whatever I couldn't get without chemicals, and you just do the best you can.
Yeah.
Right. So it is what it is, and control what you can and let go of the rest.
Just a final couple questions to round up your list of recommendations. You mentioned water. Are you an RO fan? Do you remineralize? Like, what type of water do you like? Understanding, of course, we try to avoid plastics.
Yeah. Reverse osmosis, I feel,
Yeah.
is the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. What about air filtration and air purity? Are you recommending like in-house units, like in per room? Are you a fan of just opening the doors to the outside? What can we do to sort of reduce that?
Depends where you live. If you live next to a
Mm,
steel plant, I probably wouldn't open up those doors that much. But if you're living in a forest or, not in a city, yes, I would open up, get fresh air. There's nothing better than that. So HEPA filters are good. There's EWG also has a whole list of filters,
mhm.
and air filters. And change your filters in your home as well, because that's another source. And check for mold. Mold is really an underlying, underdiagnosed, undertested, um, uh, really major component to health.
Okay. And mention quickly, if you could, your food frame method. I took the test on your website as well. If you are listening and weight loss is more your focus at the moment, you have developed a method that helps people understand how their body processes different types of food. So can you quickly tell us about how food frame works and how people can follow up if that's the area of
Yeah,
interest?
yeah. I believe that weight loss is a side effect of wellness, and I focus on wellness. And I've seen it work. Everybody loses weight with me who wants to lose weight, but we have to put the fire out before we can, we hold on to our resources when we're in an
Mm,
inflamed state. So I created Food Frame because when I started my practice, decades ago, I would put everybody on the exact same anti-inflammatory protocol. And I noticed that some would really thrive and some wouldn't, just like every new diet book or diet philosophy book comes out. And, we know that handful of people who do great and other people just don't. So
mhm,
I realized that we should all be eating according to our current health status. So that means if you've got blood sugar dysregulation, you probably are best with keto, depending on if you can qualify, or paleo. If you've got autoimmunity, I for sure am going to recommend the AIP protocol for 30 to 90 days. After that, I'm going to suggest 2 different maintenance plans. If you've got IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, or irritable bowel disease, or you've got chronic bloating, you've got some SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, I'm going to absolutely recommend low FODMAP for, again, 30 to
mhm,
90 days, and then make my recommendations. So I really believe that if whatever the fire is, we got to put that out. And
mhm,
then we can eat an anti-inflammatory maintenance
mhm.
that will help us thrive, that will help decrease that systemic inflammation, increase that good gut health, right? So that's where Food Frame, and I start with my detox because I think everybody needs to clean out the system for 2 weeks. It's not a starvation program. You eat when you're hungry, don't when you're not, but we're just eating really, really clean foods and antioxidants and amino acids to help open up the pathways for gentle detoxification. And then there's 6 different diet types that I typically recommend. So that's what I put in my book, Food Frame. Now, sometimes I go off the ranch and recommend something else for somebody, depending on their health status. But those are the typically 6 ones I do recommend. My book was endorsed by Dr. Stephen Gundry, Dr. Josh Axe, the late Suzanne Summers, and JJ Virgin. So I have spent years formulating this, and it's been working 100%. I have not had one person who says I did this and I didn't get better. So it's great. The book has tons of information in it, easy recipes, and it breaks down who it's best suited for, who it isn't best suited for, and tons of information in there as well.
Risa, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Guys, I'll link her website. It's Risa Groux, Groux.com. And is there anything else you want to shout out that we can keep an eye out for? Any upcoming interviews or things we can read to catch up with what you're doing?
Yeah, it's risagrouxnutrition.com. And there is my Food Frame, take the Food Frame quiz on there. My Achieving Optimal Thyroid Health course is on there. When I was going through my struggles with thyroid and tons of tears and tons of time and tons of money, I wish this course was available to me when I was going through that. It is everything you need to know, regardless of whether you have a thyroid, whether it's hypo, hyper, autoimmunity, what to eat, what not to eat, what supplements to take, what supplements not to take, and how to read your blood work, what to know, and how to measure it. And I'm happy to offer your listeners 10% off my RGN detox. So we'll put the code in the show notes, and yeah, there's a ton of information there. So I'm happy to help. I work with people all over the country.
It's been a real pleasure to talk with you, Risa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunny. It was great to be here.
Okay, Risa, thank you. And sorry about the